Well, part of my job is also improvising, for example, also cleaning the car with water from the river, because on this off-road tour it's really dirty, but we want to get some nicer shots for you, right? Well, you know, I'm not afraid to do the dirty work myself, or the tidy work in this case, right? So this is Autogefuehl with Thomas, and the VW ID4 Pro 4Motion is a new all-wheel drive version. What's the logic behind that? Well, usually you get rear-wheel drive as base and then optional all-wheel drive. In the US, you directly get the strongest all-wheel drive version that looks like this. In the EU, you get the top GTX version with similar horsepower, but then it looks sportier. And now there's this version with the normal look on the exterior with a little bit less all-wheel drive power. So the GTX in Europe and the US all-wheel drive version around 6 seconds in the acceleration figure, whereas this one here is at 7 seconds, and then an all-wheel drive model would be at 8.5. Let's dig into the details. You can see here the closed front grille, today one in black. So pretty cool look, especially then because the lights up here goes all the way across the vehicle. This is a very cool design feature, and the retro VW logo. And towards the side profile, yes, we've cleaned at least this side here. Not the other one, but don't tell anyone. You can get different wheel sizes, of course. These here are, in this case, 20-inch. These are the biggest 20-inch wheels, and 4.58 meters or 180 inches is the length here. You know, there's also the ID5, which would be the one then with the cut-off roof here, this coupe style. The ID4, a little bit more upright here, and this detail then is a little bit more prominent. In the rear, my favorite feature is this light strip, once again across the vehicle, and the three-dimensional taillight, which is an option, by the way, the same as the Matrix LED is an option. You start with base lamps here. And you can see, other than that, it's a rather conservative rear, but I think a very consistent design here overall. Top speed is 180 kilometers an hour or 112 miles per hour. And the battery size, 77 kilowatt hours net. Recharging actually, goes here with the flap, is officially 135 kilowatt peak, but there are higher peak figures available. They calculate in a conservative way, and 36 minutes from 5 to 80% state of charge. So they're not on top of the charging game, that's for sure. Range, however, something always approximately 400 kilometers or 250 miles. With that battery here, and it depends really on the outside temperature. There will soon be a software upgrade to the 3.2 version, and then they have also worked a little bit more on the efficiency in cold temperatures, like we have here in Iceland. It doesn't look like this, but it's really cold here, believe me, just not here at noon. And this would have been the dark side of the vehicle, or the dirty side. Interior-wise, my favorites, these seats here, beautiful seats. There are different seats available, either with fabric or here then this is the microfiber trim. On the US models you also get a full leatherette trim. So the whole interior will be 100% animal-free soon. Steering wheel not yet, but since the ID Buzz also gets the leather-free steering wheel, this will also be introduced and with a model year changed very soon. So they're heading in the right direction right there. Just not with the hashtag capacitive BS buttons at the steering wheel. They are backlit, but still it's always hard to press them while driving, and sometimes when you have your hand here, then you activate the volume plus button just by mistake or something. That's not too good actually. Gear switcher is right here. Soon going to show you the instruments, and look at that styling here. This is styling I would prefer. Just in black here, white contrast stitches, and then also here around the screen and so on. This is then this aluminum style and not the black piano lacquer we have here and here. With the GTX models, for example, we had this combination sometimes that this was blue and wasn't really fitting to the red or something, but here this is a more subtle look, the one I would go for. What do you think? Here the digital instruments. Since the 3.1 software update, you also have the energy consumption right here in the instruments and not only in the infotainment system. That's actually quite good. Other than that, you cannot change too much here. You can, for example, change the the ACC, and here the view like this, maybe left or right a little bit bigger, but usually you would leave it like this. And here in this vehicle, we also have the 3.2 software status, and they had put this one, there is 3.2.0, and it mainly contains bug fixes, so for performance and also less failures and so on. Visually, not so much has been done. You can see this is the car internal map here on beautiful Iceland. Yeah, it's really very, very cool place. This is really cool. And this is here the
Thomas.
Apple. Yes, Michelle?
Is Iceland a cool place?
Yes, Iceland is a cool place. Thank you. Yeah, now everyone got the joke. Thank you so much. This one is the Apple CarPlay integration. Whatever it is. Yeah, this is the new view then for the Apple CarPlay and so on. So overall, it's not my favorite software still. This is the AC unit, because here you either can control it like this, or then with these sliders from below. They are still not backlit. This is supposed to come with the facelift that they will get the backlit. But other than that, it's not that easy to control it while driving. It's now with less failures and less bugs. That's good, but still not the best infotainment system overall, of course. In the rear, we have plenty of legroom, no problem for tall adults, 1.89 meters or 6'2", and also headroom is close but works. And you can also open that. Yeah, there's some beeping because the ignition is on. Here, this is then the panoramic roof, and it is fixed and it has this shade. That's very good when it's hot. That's very important, and you can move around freely here. It's a free tunnel here, so there's no middle tunnel at all, because they're using that EV platform. So the rear actually gets, yeah, top-notch rating indeed from the comfort and the space you have here. And the trunk at 540 liters, and this is here our traveling luggage, and you can see that fits very well, no problem. Some space for charging cables here underneath. Welcome to the driving lounge, sport mode, acceleration, and let's go. Plop, that was 0 to 90 kilometers an hour. You also heard the bottle on Michel's side flying around from the G-force. Pretty quick. You know, this ID4 Pro 4Motion, that's how it's marketed in Europe, is acceleration-wise between the rear-wheel drive model and the top all-wheel drive model. Once again, in Europe we have the GTX as top all-wheel drive model with around 6 seconds in the acceleration figure, and in the US that would be the normal all-wheel drive model, which has the GTX spec acceleration-wise, and this one here around 7 seconds, so a second slower, not the top horsepower tune. It's just tune, you know, it's just software tune, and it doesn't have the GTX exterior, you know, so from the visuals and comparable to the US model on the outside. This one, when you want the all-wheel drive performance, maybe a little bit soft off-roading, better for towing in the back and so on. So pretty interesting concept. And acceleration, it's enough, it's pretty quick and also very smooth acceleration. You always have a rear axle bias because the motor at the rear axle is stronger. And when we're driving normally here now, we also have more power from the rear, and the front motor is just active when it's really needed on demand, for example in a harsh acceleration. There is a normal suspension or the adaptive suspension, DCC. Here in this all-wheel drive model you don't have the sporty setup. You can go for a sporty setup, however optional, or then if you go for the GTX model, which you can get in Europe. So these are, different options you have then with these. When you are rather traveling, like this, rather straight and so on, you rather go back then to the comfort mode. If you have a DCC, then you also feel a difference. How do you know if you have it? When you're inside the car and you don't know. When you're here an individual, then you can check out, here I have the DCC settings, so this vehicle here is equipped with the DCC, dynamic chassis control, which is the adaptive suspension. Controlling that while driving, you see, is very critical. So here, mode button, and then I have to pick it here, and it's not too easy to do. When you're standing still, no problem, but controlling this vehicle while driving, user interface wise, is really not the best. Or for example, resetting the trip meter, I have to go here, data, and then zero it out, for example. That works because I know it, but some things you have to know. This one here being this new software version, which is a little bit more responsive, a little bit quicker now, at least. And I think it's also good that we have now the consumption figure or the energy consumption figure here in the in the instruments. It's also a helpful and nice thing to do. The general hardware of this vehicle is really awesome. You also have very good comfort. This adaptive suspension especially is doing a good job combining sportiness and comfort. That's really nice. And I think to go for this all-wheel drive model, which is then basically the all-wheel drive model spec in the US almost, is also a clever choice. I think the GTX is not necessarily needed. Not everyone wants the very sporty character of the GTX. It's still a good compromise of sportiness and comfort, but here then a little bit more comfort, precise steering input, and indeed here when we're going also some waves here, everything is evened out very well. At the same time, the car is not leaning too much to the sides, so it's a very, very nice traveling feeling. They have also worked on the efficiency in cold times, cold temperatures here with the recent update, with the recent software update 3.2. And however, let's say it doesn't give us overall the best range on the market, but also not a bad one. So this 400 kilometers, 250 miles is always quite realistic. In slower driving, or maybe like up to 100 kilometers, 60 miles an hour and so on, and not too cold, you can score some 20 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers or even less. That you're more like in a 25 kilowatt hours on 100 miles region or something. But when it's cold and you drive a little bit faster, then it's also more in a region of 22 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers, and then you're rather getting less than 400 kilometers or less than 250 miles. But that's something you can approximately calculate with here at the moment. Also, once again, around 20 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers, which is indeed a rather realistic figure for this vehicle. So you feel that hardware-wise and handling-wise, driving-wise, all the experience they have from decades of work on these vehicles really play a major role. And software-wise, finally picking up the game. They have been late to that game, to the software game. At least there are improvements which you also profit from while driving. And now some soft off-roading. We can also go to this traction mode, and everything from the all-wheel drive and the traction system is optimized for some loose ground. And the good thing here is we still have that rear wheel bias, so that's also then more fun while soft off-roading, for example. And I mean, it's not the most super off-road capable vehicle, but due to the all-wheel drive you can get through some loose terrain, and it also doesn't have the lowest ground clearance. You should just not go then for the sports suspension, because that's a little bit lower, and keep it then with the original one here. And once again, also the suspension is playing a good job here, because we also have a lot of potholes here then in this case, and still there's decent comfort while driving. It is really a lot of fun to drive this vehicle. It doesn't look the most from the exterior, but it feels actually sportier than it looks because of the low center of gravity. That's really a cool thing. As for recuperation, by the way, it's also worth talking about that here. When you have the D mode, it's just rolling all the time, and when you press the brake pedal, hardly anything is happening in the very first area, and that can be irritating, and sometimes you're braking too late, so you have to get used to it. You really have to press the brake harder. First all the recuperation is being used, and then the real brakes set in. In the B mode, however, when I get off the throttle, then there's stronger deceleration, and especially in the ID4, ID5, this is to me the better setting, because it prevents this loose of feeling, so to speak. Because again, I think when you're just hitting the brake pedal just a little bit now, hardly anything is happening. And it happened to me now twice during this tour here, that I was braking a little bit too late, although I was already braking, I was already on the brake pedal, but hey, why nothing is happening? And then I had to brake harder than intended. So I think brake pedal setting here not the most ideal, but when you leave it in the B mode, that you have a little bit more recuperation, I think that is definitely a better setting than here. It's very cool here on Iceland, wow, so beautiful. But here you can see good traction also from these tires, and also when I hit the accelerator pedal, due to that all-wheel drive, loose ground, but still hardly any wheel spin because it's evenly distributed. Some more power sent to the front wheels. Beautiful small river here as well. That small bridge, very impressive. Such a great landscape here on Iceland. You should definitely pay a visit if you have time to at some point. Just have to calculate that the weather we have here now is very uncommon. Usually there's much more bad weather, so we're extremely lucky this time, definitely. Let me do one more off-road acceleration and see if there's no one behind me, because then we can see again when I really hit it all the way out. There, perfect traction. Now the difference is when I go to the sport mode, let's see, with that loose ground. Yeah, maybe you've heard and also seen here in the instruments, had some wheel spin there and also put some dust in the air. So this is very interesting, so well done in that traction mode, and especially the acceleration is basically reduced a little bit, that I don't have any wheel spin. So that's very interesting how you can just electronically adjust that, and also one of the reasons that electric all-wheel drives are actually very, very good. So they do a great job. It's not that you need these mechanical links and so on. Here's no mechanical link between the front and the rear axle. That's actually perfectly fine. You can do so much with this all-wheel drive, even in harder terrain. It's just, of course, at some point you would lack the real ground clearance. So the basic all-wheel drive model, I think, is way to go here for the ID4 and the ID5. You don't really need the GTX. This one here already has enough acceleration. And also styling-wise, I think the normal pack is to me also a little bit more likable, also from the interior here with the more subtle colors. So probably we've tested the version here today that you should actually go for. If you want to see the ID5 GTX we've been testing recently, ID5 with different shape, check out that video here. And of course also one of the main competitors.